Hello everyone, welcome to the interview for Intercultural Leadership. I'm Sam Jackson and I'm here with my wife and missionary Luz Jackson, and we're asking her some of the questions we covered in class in terms of our reading to discuss the dynamics of intercultural leadership in a mission setting and a multicultural ministry. So first of all, Luz, thank you for agreeing to do this. It's a blessing and a help.
Of course.
Really appreciate it. And tell us a little bit about yourself, your mission service, before we start.
Okay, hi, I'm Luz Jackson. And first, I've been here in the U.S. for the last 28 years. I'm from the Philippines and work as a missionary through Youth with a Mission, where I met my husband during the conference, a Luzon conference, which one of the sponsors are from, Youth with a Mission. But I was discipled, or I came to know the Lord through one of the missionaries of Youth with a Mission, and they came and shared me about the gospel and stuff like that, and then later on they come back and visiting me and stuff like that, and then after that, they disciple me, and then I went to discipleship training school, and then I become staff. And one of the mission that I was doing back then in the Philippines is that I do like a red light district, so every night along with some other staff, either short-term mission or long-term mission, we go and visit the red light district. But there's no more red light district now in the Philippines, but during the mid-80s, early 80s, mid-80s. And after that, I have a Bible study among the single parents and stuff like that in Smoky Mountain. And then later on, I was the assistant director of a school sponsorship program. And during the time, we have 700 children that I'm looking after, from talking to their teachers and making purchase for their uniforms and stuff like that, book bags and pencils, and some programs that the kids can be involved, not only like supporting them through school, but also at the same time supporting them, about their spiritual life.
Excellent, appreciate that background. As you think about YWAM, we've done quite a bit of reading about YWAM, particularly its leadership structure and the way that leadership is carried out there. What did leadership look like in general as a YWAMer? How was that structured?
Well, of course, we have a lot of short-term missions, and then short-term missions coming from different around the world, They will be there from 3 weeks to 3 months, And then, but of course, before you become a staff member and if you really want to serve YWAM, you have to go to discipleship training school, which is, of course, around the United States, everywhere, Europe, like Asia and stuff like that. And so the structure of the leadership is like, we have like a specific, things that we have to do, or things that we are really called, like I am called to do the children ministry, and which is the school sponsorship ministry, and then a Bible study right there in the Smoky Mountain area. And then we have a base leader, and but we are equally, involved. There's some people who are their ministry is doing the books and stuff like that, and we have a ministry about just driving around the missionaries and stuff like that. And so that's the way they structure of the ministry.
So I know that YWAM is noted for its international flavor, that there are people, as you said, from all over the world. Are there differences in the way that, say, base leaders lead, depending on where they're from? There are times you have, say, an American base leader, or someone from a Western nation that leads. Sometimes you have a Filipino that leads. Are there differences, similarities? What are the dynamics of that leadership?
Okay, most of the time our leaders are like, of course, from another countries, which is Youth with a Mission is really pioneered by, from America, and then so we live in a common area, you know, and then whether you have families, single, wherever, we live in the same place, you know, and stuff like that. And what do you call that? The difference, of course, that this is just only me, you know. I mean, the difference, of course, is that most of the top leadership is from another countries, and then the Filipinos that will be discipled, and then they have to go through a lot of process. They have to go through discipleship training school first and stuff like that, and then um, then there will be like rise as one of the leadership. But most of the time we have people from another countries, you know.
Does that ever cause any tension when you say you're in the Philippines, ministering among Filipinos, and you have someone from another nation that's coming in to lead Filipinos in a Filipino context? Are there ever cultural tensions because of that?
Well, yes, of course, there's some tension, you know, just human, you know. And then, of course, all of us, you know, we love the Lord and we want to serve the Lord, but of course, each one of us has differences, you know. And then one of the difference, of course, is like, you know, I'm a Filipino, I know my people, and this is the way we do it, you know. And then, but most of the people from another countries who's leading is like more like, they are more like, culturally, like, this is the way we're gonna do it, this is how we're gonna do it. And of course, you know, versus the people who's very structured, and then versus to the Filipinos who's like, this is our culture and this is this is how we do it, you know.
So that makes sense, that there's just that there's an equal desire to serve the Lord, but kind of sometimes the tension of how that's going to work out.
Exactly.
In the background. So that's an excellent thing. You've worked in the United States as a minority with ministries as well. Are there any commonalities or commonalities in terms of between, say, that cross-cultural, multicultural, intercultural exchange that you found in the Philippines? Any tensions like that?
Well, I think here in the U.S. it's kind of like the cultural differences. Of course, it's like, of course, the religious, the religion. It's kind of like, what is that five thing? You know, you cross the barriers, the religion, socioeconomic,
cultural
differences. You know, those are the things. You know, and I mean, in the Philippines, it's kind of like the difference between is the poor and the rich. You can be black as black, you can be white as white, you can, you know, but it's still different, you know. People look at me through my experience in a secular job either, you know, they kind of treat me as some kind of like, you know, do you really know what you're doing? Or, you know, it's kind of like there's always kind of like, I would say, a doubt, you know, what can I really do? And that's the difference that I can see, you know. And like in my country, if you have education, you know, you can do things, you know, because we go by your education. But here, even though, let's say, I have a degree in business administration, you know, I mean, back in my country, I finished college, but here, the way maybe I look, you know, is it's still different, you know. I'm not saying everybody, but what I'm saying is that there's some people or there's some group that you can tell that, you know, that's the way they're thinking as a minority.
So you see the difference in the confidence that people may have in abilities based on your background and where you're from here as opposed to in the Philippines?
Yes, I would say, yeah. Of course, it's kind of like, you know, but it doesn't bother me. It's because I feel like, you know, I can prove you that I can do the things that you can do, you know. I mean, racism, yeah, it's there, and I can see that, especially Sam and I both married, you know, it's like he's black and Filipino, you know. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, thinking what type of couple we are, you know, what capabilities we are, you know. And that's how I, you know, share about that.
Excellent. Well, that's part one of our interview. We're going to continue asking some more questions a little bit later. So we thank you for this first half, and we'll continue in a moment with some more questions and answers with Luz. Welcome back. We're at part two of our missionary interview with Luz Jackson. And we'll pick up where we left off, talking about the intercultural dynamics of leadership in multicultural, intercultural teams. In particular, Luz, you've also been a missionary with the North American Mission Board, with NAM. What have been some of the differences in, say, your time with YWAM and some of the intercultural dynamics there, and your intercultural dynamics regarding to NAM? I would say, I know that you and I have done church planting in inner city settings with suburban churches sponsoring and all kinds of folks mixed in there. So what are some of the dynamics you've seen at work in that?
Okay, being a missionary back then in Youth with a Mission, we are more like a discipleship. It's like we disciple. Our goal is that for to make him to know him and make him known. So that's the YWAM that we use the motto. And but sometimes the one that I look at is that now is that we make sure that we will talk about the Lord to them and disciple them, and then they get saved. But then sometimes after that, what's the next one? There's not a lot of church, will accept people who has a lot of baggage. Back then it's a lot more different. Now I would say, so it's very difficult because when you disciple them and they come to know the Lord and they want their life to go straight. So you don't know, they have to be linked to a church, and then, but then our church planting, that we came to NAM, through our experiences is really different. Our vision is about, what do you call that, multicultural, me being Filipino, you're black, and then of course our children, when we do church planting, we get people and then introduce about Christ to them, and then they get saved, and then they will come to a place like our church that we're starting, and then that is the difference, which both of them, has some kind of like equal value, but of course our experience to NAM, is like the church planting is really a very, very good key, because there's some people also that will not go to a church already established, but most of the time the people who's get saved and then start our Bible study and stuff like that, and then they more like feel like secure and love more. I'm not saying that big churches are not, or maybe I don't know if that's the right answer.
Well, I think it's a part of that dynamic is that if people are coming to Christ and they are being led in a setting that perhaps there are major cultural differences, or even the culture is more, say, churched and that kind of thing, it's more of a challenge than it is in some other setting, some other way. Then when you intentionally plan a church that accepts all people, the leadership dynamic is different. It's more accepting of those differences.
Exactly. So.
Oh, that's great. I think it's a very important dynamic. Part of that multicultural interplay as well is doing short-term missions and outreaches. Well, how has that dynamic been different? Because you've been part, say, of a missionary receiving short-termers and leading them there in a setting, but how has it been different, say, when we take a team to the Philippines, for example, and there are all kinds of people in that team. We've taken teams that have consisted of African Americans, African immigrants, North American Anglos, different people in one team, and sometimes that's gone well in general, but there have been sometimes challenges. What has that been like leading in that way?
Okay, one thing is that I got saved through a missionary walking in the street and hand me a flyer about the Lord, So I really believe about the short-term and long-term missions, sometimes, culturally, you and me went to the Philippines and bring a team, Sometimes the difference is that, like, when they're there, the tension sometimes arises in terms that they don't want to follow you, and it's kind of like they want to do their own thing, So I think that's the challenges most of the time. But then in one way also is that we put them to work, and I know that even though the tension, because of course the devil is wanting to work on that,
Right, in that same setting, right?
in the same setting, but then, they're still powerful, that one thing is very different, you have to raise your support going to another country, you have to acclimate with their culture, whether it's 2 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and stuff like that. You have to work hard, and then you have to really show the love of the Lord to people there, and so, I mean, but of course there's a lot of things that that they don't want to do. Sometimes I don't like the food, or or it's too hot in here and I
But
don't
what
want
happens when there's one of those severe kind of meltdowns, when someone is really, they've reached that point where they are out of their element and they're really struggling? And I know in a couple of cases we've seen that at play, where someone just really struggles and they almost shut down. How do you deal with that, particularly when there's a cultural difference and you really have to get them where they need to be to serve, but they're wanting not to move, they're wanting to stay where they are?
One thing is, like, I just noticed, sometimes about mission. I'm from the Philippines and I know the culture and stuff like that. So when our experience bringing a team, our first team is like 23 people, and then one thing I observe is that, like, um, we put them in very nice hotel. It's because, my point is that, if you only 3 weeks and then in the mission field, and then you have very bad accommodation, most of the time they get sick. They cannot acclimate to the culture. They cannot eat. And then it's like, you go there for 2 weeks mission, and then 2 weeks of them you're sick. It's like not effective, and that's only me. That's my experience. And so you and me, because I'm from the Philippines, so I got a very, very good, what do you call that, accommodation. It's not. And then, well, some people said, that you go there for mission. You go there to, dig dirt and tell the people how you love the Lord, and you have to live what they have in culture. Well, in my opinion, it's not really necessary that way, because Philippines is not only like poor people. There's middle class, there's upper class. In my opinion, bringing a mission there is like the biggest thing for me is accommodation, because I want that 3 weeks that you work so hard, rather than 2 weeks you're sick. So I don't know if that's the right answer.
Well, it's a great way, I think, of showing the diversity within a culture. Many times, and I think you really nailed that well, people think of going to a country on missions, forgetting it's about the gospel primarily. They think, well, you're going to help the poor, which you are, but not everyone in the country is poor, but yet everyone needs the Lord. And so there are people who are doing well, need the Lord, people who aren't. And so if the mission is to be engaged as possible, I think that's very wise to say, we want people to be comfortable as they can, but you're going to be stretched in some way still in what you serve.
Yeah, it's gonna be lots of challenges. It's because, you're there. You're going to a battlefield. A battlefield of, what I'm saying is that battlefield is that you have to reach, to these people. They're so poor, they don't have anything, and then what you gonna tell me about Jesus? And then why I'm like this? But I think our responsibility to the Lord is there to share them, there to put a seed,
Yes.
there to give even the 3 weeks love to a certain, person, that Jesus loved you. It's because sometimes we be all in the Philippines, especially in the very poor area, and then why I'm like this, why there's rich and they're poor, and why, I can't find a job, why, everything is why, and then of course the answers is about the Lord, and that is our responsibility as a mission that we're going there.
That's very powerful. What advice would you have, let's say, for someone who is considering multicultural ministry, intercultural service, dealing with different cultures? what would your advice be? What are the kind of things you would say we need to think about or look at as we prepare for that kind of ministry?
Okay, how long? It's like almost we're starting plant churches, since 1992. And then I barely come from I mean, just probably a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of years when we start, church planting after he graduated in seminary. It's like in the beginning, I don't know what you're talking about, church planting. So, in my opinion, as a minority come from the Philippines, it's like, does America need more churches? Does America need, uh, I thought that everybody is like doing so well, that they're not struggling. And then why we have to plant a church? Why we have to start a church? There's so many churches around, why they cannot go there. But then later on, of course, I follow my husband where he go, and then I understand that they really need the Lord, and then church planting is a very key area for people to come. Sometimes they're not welcome, or they not feel comfortable to go to a church. I mean, but church planting, we did church planting. We started in our living room. I mean, all the way to my bedroom, to the basement. Everybody is like there. It's like, I'd say blood, sweat, and tears. Church planting. But anyway, my advice is that, just do what you can do, there's always hope, and then put your faith in the Lord, because I believe, that it will come, of course, in the time, the Lord will give. And you probably, some people church planting for 3, 4, 5 years and still nothing happening, I mean, but whether they're coming to your church or not, but you put a seed in there, because we experienced that. When we were in Cleveland, we disciple, especially a lot of Filipinos there too, and even in the inner city of Cleveland, I mean, some churches, like, you're not allowed to come, or not, I'm not saying you're not allowed, but it's like, it's very different because you don't know if you're welcome or something.
Right.
So my advice is just keep on loving the people that around you. Don't measure that, is it gonna work or not gonna work, because we don't know. It's really upon the Lord. And just, I mean, a lot of patience. I mean, and faith. That's how I, give an advice to people who, or ministers, or start,
Yeah, I
church
think those
planting.
2 words, patience and faith, are critical in any kind of intercultural work that just taking the time that it takes. When we started ministry, we were talking about different kinds of churches. I think one of the struggles that often is dealt with is that in an organization, say like NAM, will have structures in place, and you're planning a church that is very different from that structure. And it takes really relying on those things you talked about, and being patient in that, to overcome sometimes when the structure doesn't quite fit culturally, the leadership you're trying to offer for the people you're trying to reach.
Exactly. Back then with church planting in Detroit, it's like after like 2 3 years that we doing the church, and then suddenly there's a big economic collapse in the city of, I mean, in Detroit, and then so a lot of people have to move out state. A lot of people have to move, even though they're in state, but where they can find job. Of course, you're almost there. You reach up to 100, and then suddenly wing, and then you got 50. Almost half of your congregation left. It's not because it's because the economic need, and so that's our experience. In our church planting. Of course, we just go back to the same again, and then we have to keep on going. So don't lose faith. It just I think that's the way it is, because at the judgment seat with the Lord, the Lord will be. But look at those people that we minister, even though they were part of our church for a little bit back in Michigan, you know, but now we have like, you know, a connection with them that how the Lord is doing in their lives, you know, thinking, you know, that we bring the gospel in their house and their families, you know, and then so, but that thing is like, it's like a reward, you know, it's a reward for us that, you know, we lost, we gain, we lost, we gain, we lost, we gain, and that's, you know, and because the Lord want us to just be there, you know, for the people that coming in and the people also coming out, you know.
That's absolutely right. Luz, I'm very thankful you took time with the interview to share what's on your heart, beautiful heart for the Lord, for His work, breaking down barriers, and I think it's helpful for us to understand better how we can lead in those situations, and I'm grateful. Thank you, sweetheart.
Yeah, and I just want to really to assure you that working for the Lord is very, very difficult. I mean, but the only advice to not only, I mean, the work is a lot, and, you know, and then, but the laborers, you know, so we keep on striving as, you know, you guys, you know, working to study to bring some more laborers in the Lord, you know, so thank you very much for being a part of that, and I'm proud of my husband.
Thank you for being with us, and we'll continue to work through this together as we study. Take care, everybody.